This is Investment Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Daily live streaming interactive featuring Mrs. Backup. Subscribe, hit the notification, smash the likes. Now, here's Backup Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Good morning and welcome back to Investment Perspectives, everybody. We're going to break down the Greg Kidd interview with DAI, who absolutely smashed it. 12 amazing questions to one of the original employees or workers and investors in Ripple, Greg Kidd, and shout out to him for doing the interview with him. I mean, that was just... it's remarkable. We got a lot to cover, so let's get into this thing. Before we start, I want to let everybody know, I've told you I really love iTrust Capital. You're not going to find a better company that's offering crypto IRAs, is now offering gold IRAs as well. And I'm telling you, you need to contact them if you're interested in getting your money in an IRA or crypto IRA position or gold, because it is right here. It tells you so many ways. Let's look at this really quickly. An investment platform, iTrust Capital, for alternative assets and retirement accounts, said that it launched a new service to give its customers access to physical gold through a digital marketplace. The investment firm explained that the clients can place trades through iTrust interface. The trade is executed through precious metals dealer Kitco Metals. The client's ownership of the gold is recorded through Tradewind's Vault Chain technology, a ledger system using blockchain technology. Love that too. The physical gold securely stored at the Royal Canadian Mint. These guys are the real deal. And I'm telling you right now, it is so good to see that they've done that. I know they've been working very hard on this. This is from Blake Scadron. I've been involved in gold IRA space for more than a decade. iTrust's solution to invest in physical gold and IRAs is by far the best option for investors, said Blake Scadron, co-founder and chief operating officer at iTrust Capital. Clients get all the benefits of owning gold and avoid the pitfalls of other IRA models, such as paying high markups, dealing with commission sales reps, or suffering from inferior liquidity when it's time to sell. You see that? I'm telling you, these guys are really fantastic. Make sure you check them out if you're interested in IRA, gold, or crypto back. Best deal around. All right, now let's get quickly into this interview right here, where DAI smashed it. All right, we're going to break this down, and I want to start at like 7 minutes here. And before I do, I want to show you also, this is linked to the private equity company that held the conference and had them there. And shout out to them for what they're doing. And just to cover a few things in the earlier part of the video, I'm just condensing because we're going to have to break down some of these questions, and I want to get right to it here. But link to private equity investment company offering Ripple stock in blocks, right? You don't hold it yourself. It goes into, let's just say, an escrow, and you buy a form of their offering, and it could be a fractional offering of that stock. It's called a SPV, a special purpose vehicle. And it also, I also wanted to bring this up too. This also allows Ripple to offer these opportunities of buy-ins through private equity holders like this, because if they have too many people come in, accredited investors, and buy and physically hold the stock, they would have to report like an open public sale if there's too many people buying directly the stock there and holding it. So that's why you don't retain the voting rights when you actually buy into the SPV of the Ripple stock itself. And like I said, it also gives you the fractional option as well. So this is pretty interesting. It's a way for Ripple to continue to offer in the private market the stock to others without having to openly report to the SEC at this point before eventually doing an IPO. Pretty damn smart stuff. So let's get into this fantastic interview here. He absolutely smashed it. Let's start right here. And I'm going to jump in some places, and some places I'll let it run for the continuity. So let's do this and get into the first question here.
Of Ripple. And so my first question is, you obviously own equity in Ripple. Do you also own XRP?
I do have quite a stake in XRP. I actually optioned 1% of the currency back over 5 years ago. So
Wow, 1%. I'd say he's a believer.
I took a position on 1% of the entire float. So yes, I would say I have some XRP.
Do you see the XRP in a similar manner as being the oil?
Well, I do. That's a good analogy. There's Ripple that has its business model, which is an alternative to correspondent banking and SWIFT and the way money has worked between countries, each of which has their own silo. Ripple is a ledger that spans all the currencies. And so it's kind of hard to remember, but Ripple was the second digital currency after Bitcoin. And it was the first one that you actually knew who was behind it. I mean, we're all still searching for Satoshi. With Ripple, you knew it was, Arthur Brito, Chris Larson, Jed McCaleb, David Schwartz. I mean, they're actual people you could go and see and meet and have a beer with. And so it was a company you could join. And yeah, they had their own oil. And at the time, it wasn't, when it started, it wasn't worth anything. Unlike ICOs, where they sold it to the public, the first gift of XRP was from its creators. They actually just gave Ripple 80% of it. So this was all pre-ICO, pre-Ether. At the time, we knew it was, we didn't know whether it was oil or water, but it was liquid and it moved.
Oil or water? Both necessary in the common world today, whether we're talking about manufacturing existence or whether or general life existence through travel and production and all of these things with oil, or whether we're just talking about life on Earth. It doesn't happen without water. This is the mindset and the macro understanding of everybody who was early on into Ripple. All right, let's keep going here because it's fantastic stuff.
Okay, well, here's one for you. Stefan, I'm assuming you know.
And Stefan Thomas was the CTO. I should have included him in that original piece.
Right. He was the CTO. He said this. He said, our product ultimately is the currency, the bridge asset. So the question there is Ripple successful without XRP being successful?
Well, without XRP, and again, it depends on what you mean by successful. So successful could mean a high price. Obviously, that's beneficial to me. But the philosophy of Ripple was it just needs to be liquid, right? Because people can get into it and out of it to do things. Now, obviously, if you hold it, you want it to be higher rather than lower. But like hog bellies are, they're useful. Like I don't have an overall stake in the rise of hog belly prices. But if hog bellies are something that's needed for producing a product, you want to have liquid markets. And so for Ripple to be successful, XRP needs to be liquid so there's not friction getting into it and out of it. That liquidity is in many ways more important than the absolute price. But to those of us that see it being in demand, well, when there's more demand than supply, the prices rise, and that's beneficial to be on that ticket.
Right.
Well, now, this is interesting because this is where it really starts to kick up a gear in this next question here. He gives a very standard kind of answer. The solid example, the hog bellies are needed and this and then the liquidity, we all know. But things begin to step up right in here. Let's listen here. And this goes to, and let me just set the time marker here, just for the sake of getting right to the questions here. Let me go ahead a bit.
So the question is, can Ripple IPO without a declaration that XRP is not a security?
Listen.
Well, and as someone who's gone through the IPO process myself, there's going to be a bunch of risk declarations, and things can be not a security and then become a security. They can be a security and then become not a security. So that is definitely going to be one of the risk disclosures if Ripple goes out without an SEC determination that it's not or is a security. The wisdom of our government is black can be white one day and white can be black the next day. So even if something is declared one thing, there's no guarantee it's going to be that thing in the future. So right. I don't think that's an impediment. I mean, it would be great if the SEC just rolled out the red carpet and said the Ripple stock is the security and the currency is not. But I don't see that happening. So I believe the forward motion is going to be without a definitive statement.
Powerful. he acknowledges here that it is possible for Ripple to IPO without there being a definitive statement on the currency XRP. And that to me is a very, very interesting point that he's making there, because I would have thought they would need a determination before going to an IPO, and they just need to list the risk and file it and make people understand that this has not been determined as they move through it. And he believes that they can move through this process without having the final determination on the asset XRP. Phenomenal. Great question. All right, let's move to the next one here. It rolls right into it. Here we go.
And this is kind of along those lines as well. Are we waiting on, because this is a big issue as well with regard to really all digital assets, but specifically XRP. Are we waiting on regulations to be decided or to be announced with regard to XRP?
I don't think so. I mean, there has been shown a way through the thicket. Telegram obviously didn't do it. The original Libra did not do it, but there are other companies that have done, for instance, what's called a Reg A offering, which is a way of having the asset actually be a security and get through the red tape for doing that, and then have a path to becoming not a security in the future. There haven't been any really big name companies that have done that, but the SEC has shown that there's a narrow path to getting through this, whether that's the path that Ripple chooses to go through or not. They're kind of too big to be a Reg A offering. Reg A offerings are capped at $50 million of a raise. I think Ripple's outgrown that.
Right. Well,
fantastic. So here he's just acknowledging, the extension of that question. Watch what happens next as it moves right into an escrow question here. I love this one.
Now, also, there's the issue of the escrow. For those that don't know, Ripple has, I don't remember the figures, roughly 50 billion in escrow?
It's over 50% of the XRP float. And you mean how much is an escrow locked up?
Right, locked up.
So they keep a proportion. It's like a central bank putting a lock on the gold.
A central bank? I thought Ripple was a blockchain infrastructure company. A central bank? Huh.
Down there, so somebody can't run and just do a raid on the gold and sell it all and have a party. So they put a bunch of the XRP under lock so that the market knows it's not going to be flooded with Ripple selling XRP at any period of time, and that creates some sense of security that Ripple's acting sort of in the role of like a central bank to make
a central bank again, in the role of a central bank.
Make sure that there's no debasement of the currency.
Now that's pretty darn interesting. Let's keep going, because I love where this is going. Listen to where this goes here.
Now, with regard to that escrow, does Ripple have to disclose prior to IPO? Would they have to disclose whether any of that escrowed XRP is owned, earmarked, held in trust, or pre-allocated in any kind of way to any other person or entity prior to that IPO? Would they have to disclose that?
Having been through IPOs before, everything is disclosed. I don't know if there's a specific requirement for that, but I cannot imagine an IPO going forward without like total disclosure about where Ripple stands with all of those issues.
Remarkable comment. He's acknowledging that they're going to have to reveal what's really going on with that escrow, if anything at all. I have to say, I think we all have been following XRP enough to know what the ultimate goal is. That question is straight fire, and it will be interesting to see what the IPO for Ripple, once they do it, what it will reveal about that escrow when they actually file. That is going to be interesting to watch. Now let's just skip ahead really quickly here and get to this next spot right here. And let's go here. And I want you to listen very carefully to what happens here when he asks him about the Miguel Villez Global Reserve Currency comment as a question. Listen to what he says here.
Ripple had a simple goal of making XRP the world's reserve digital currency. So the question I have is, do you think that Ripple will achieve this goal?
Well, see, my hopes are tied up with his vision, but that's why I joined Ripple. I mean, when I joined Ripple, it looked like Bitcoin with two extra columns: currency and who issued that currency. And so, I want to live in the Star Trek world. And in the Star Trek world, it doesn't matter whether you're a Klingon, a Romulan, Federation, they could all buy dilithium crystals.
Listen.
But you can't do that if your form of value is all in a silo. And so Ripple...
All on a silo. A siloed island. He's referencing the analogy to the early days of the internet. This is really remarkable stuff because that siloed island bit is pretty interesting. Let's keep listening. It's going to come back up here later.
Was the first that basically had a, like, if you will, an intergalactic currency, something that could go everywhere. The great thing, though, I mean, Bitcoin had that as well, but in Bitcoin, you could only have Bitcoin. On Ripple, you could have both the XRP, but you could also have a representation of all the other fiat currencies. So there was a way in and a way out. So it's not just the chips at the poker table. Ripple built the casino in the window where you could exchange the chips to get into and out of dollars or any other fiat currency. And so, you know, on the goal to becoming the digital currency for the world, having convertibility sounds like a good building block. So if Bitcoin was 1.0, Ripple looked like 2.0 to me, and looked like it had a better chance, both because of speed, performance, but this ledger that had both crypto but also fiat currency, that looks to me like the bridge between the old world and a possible new world. So again, the jury's out. I obviously decided to take a punt on it. You know, I still remain active and keen in the community.
Remarkable what he says here, and what he points to in my eyes hearing that is, you know, really in order to be a global reserve currency, it's funny as it may sound, it's not the token. The token is important, but what is the underlying theme of this answer, this reply he's giving here? It's the exchange. It's the decentralized ledger. It's the XRP ledger that has the ability to house and transact anything of value, whether it's a cryptocurrency or whether it's a fiat dollar or whether it's a token that's been created to represent an asset on the ledger. Because that universal ledger, that open permissionless system, that ledger is where the real value is. I'm reminded in this reply of Glenn Hutchins' remark about the value is in the protocol. The price of the token is a distraction and in fact uninformative. Let's keep going here. This is remarkable. Okay, so let me just jump ahead just a little bit here to right here, and let's listen again.
What we're doing and executing on a day-by-day basis is, in fact, taking over SWIFT. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how close do you think Ripple is to taking over SWIFT?
Well, I mean, there's still a long ways to go. I put it like in that process, we're still at sort of a 2 or 3, because you can look at how much money is still passing through those old legacy rails, and old habits die hard. I mean, those correspondent banks, they make a tremendous amount of money on the friction that remains within the correspondent banking system. And so while some banks have gotten on board with Ripple, let's be very clear, when you have something that reduces that much friction, that's going to cut into, you know, a very exclusive club of banks that have had it very good for them for a very long time. And so it doesn't matter what your technology is. You can have even regulation on your side, but that is a powerful market dynamic to unwind. And so don't know what it's going to take to get to a tipping point. Right? SWIFT is still the big dog, right? So Brad's a hungry guy. He's a aggressive. He's got a suit on, but he's aggressive. So I don't want to handicap that one as above sort of 2 or 3 out of 10.
Okay, a 2 or 3 out of 10. Now, I've seen a lot of people on crypto already talk about, well, that's a long way off. A 2 out of 3 out of 10 is not good. Okay, those people don't really understand business very well. Okay, let me explain to you something. I'm going to give you a quick analogy real quick. I had a small little modest beach company that had a beach product that I invented. And I started to offer the main products that go along with that. Chairs, umbrellas, towels, all that kind of stuff. So as I did, I realized through my marketing technique, I had a very, very special way of being able to get myself at the level of all the top companies that were out there, like Rio Brand, Tommy Bahama, and things of that nature. And let me tell you something. Just little old me was able to sneak in and scoop up 10% of that market share in my first 2 to 3 months in that space. And let me tell you something. The largest producer of beach supplies called me and tried to sue me because I had taken 10% of that market share. When you think of taking something over, don't think of 100% takeover. That's not what's needed. When you're talking about scooping out market share, 2 to 3 can cause a really great conversation because they don't want to let things get to a 4 or 5, and they damn sure ain't trying to see it at a 7 or an 8. Make sure you understand that it doesn't take what you may think it takes to impede on that market share that Swift has. And although he points out that Swift is very slow, and the large banks themselves, as he spoke of, are very slow to want to change because the friction is making them a lot of money, they can see the writing on the wall. And at some point, they don't want to become like the music industry and the large record companies that turned their nose to digital music, and it ended up collapsing the old market structure of the big record companies. So they see the writing on the wall, and I don't believe they're going to let it happen to them either. So just remember, a 2 to 3 is quite a stab in the gut to their market share. So it's pretty interesting where they're at with the adoption. And I don't mean market share like they already have the payments, but if they're at a 2 to 3 and Swift sees them at a 2 to 3 in the mass in adoption of the tech, you can bet your bottom dollar it won't be long before that conversation gets resolved. Okay, let's keep going. Here's another great question here. This is absolute fire. Listen.
Right.
Long ways to go.
Right. On another thing that you see a lot in social media, the catchphrase of the anti-XRP or anti-Ripple people is that banks won't use XRP. Will banks use XRP in your opinion?
Well, so we went through this, and one of the things I saw was like banks are going to be kind of like the last one to come to the party. So you see who the intermediate solution was that to go to not to banks, but to go to the money transmitters. And so when folks like MoneyGram start using XRP, or other folks that are in the money business and are moving money around, they're not as stodgy as banks, and they're not part of the correspondent banking boys club, right? So there's always going to be folks that are at different points on the innovation and adoption curve. And and banks, despite whatever PR talk they take, they're very far back on that curve. But the money transmitters in the world have been more rock and roll in that, and that's been an easier market to get started in. We're still very, very early on in bank adoption. Some of the early banks we did just used it because they were multinational, international banks that had different parts. They just used it to move money between their own subsidiaries, right? So that was like the first usage, because they were still having to wire transfer just between their own subsidiaries, because there's no way to move money without correspondent banking, even when it's within your own bank. And they could do that without having to worry about persuading the other banks to do it. They could just persuade themselves to do it.
Now that's a powerful statement right there. Now, listen to what, first of all, two things. One, he talks about the remittance industry was easier to approach because they weren't as staunchy, right? There's a less height bar there for regulatory concerns, and the banks have way more of that. And they're also more confident and arrogant in the fact that they don't feel they need to do anything as quickly as everyone else is. Now, here's the other part. Then he talks about, then we started using multinational banks that could use the settlement with it inside the bank. Well, he's pointing to this. This is the World Economic Forum Central Bank Digital Currency Policy Toolmaker Kit. Came out in January of this year. And this is exactly what they said it's for. Crypto assets designed for inter or intra payments and settlements. JPM coin and XRP. He's telling you that it's happening. The World Economic Forum is telling you they plan on it being a solution. Oh, this is really good. Really good. All right, let's go. Runs right into number 10 here. We got two more after this one. Let's check it out.
Those are the early use cases.
Okay, well, most of the market to this point has been pure speculation, but I think that everybody would agree that the whole concept of XRP is that as there's more liquidity in the system, that there's a price rise along with it. What do you think makes the XRP price rise? When you take speculation out of it, what do you think is going to make that XRP price rise?
Well, there's a limited amount of XRP in the world. I mean, 100 billion sounds like a big number. But look, what is XRP competing with? Right now in the correspondent banking system, banks have to deposit money, nostro, vostro, all around the world. So there's pots of liquidity so that things can move from one silo to another. The way that all works is with pre-funded liquidity. And all that pre-funded liquidity happens in all the different fiat currencies of the world. So if you really want to be able to service money all around and move it, you've got to have all these pre-funded pots and all these different currencies. But if you could agree on one currency and one that you could replenish, not just 9 to 5, but 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you'd need less liquidity because you could see that when you're getting low, you can restock. And how long does it take to restock? 3 seconds. How much does it cost to restock? Less than a penny. And so the advantage of XRP is it's a much more efficient method of moving liquidity around. It would be like having an engine that ran on a teacup of oil rather than a gallon of oil. Everything still needs liquidity. Pre-funding is good, but when you can top up your pre-funding in 3 seconds, you need a lot less oil in the engine for the engine to work well. And that's what Ripple brought to the market.
Are you saying that a lot of that nostro money one day is going to be in XRP? Is that the ultimate goal?
Oh, it's going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced by XRP. And so that just that demand for the thimble of oil, like that thimble is pretty big. And so if all the banks need just enough XRP to handle their liquidity requirements, and you also have money transmitters doing it, and maybe even just major corporations are doing it as well. They're just posting their own liquidity around. Everybody needs less liquidity than they needed nostro and vostro fiat currency, but that's still a lot of practical need for XRP. And so I think Ripple's done some of those calculations. If each bank around the world and each other regulated financial institution had just enough XRP for their liquidity needs, that would create amazing practical demand for XRP all around the world. Just like there's only 21 million Bitcoins, if people want to have that in their portfolio as like a defensive asset, by the time all the different retirement funds, hedge funds, individuals buy just to have a little bit of Bitcoin tucked away, that creates an overall aggregate demand for Bitcoin. Same is true for Ripple, although its purpose is not just like as a panic currency, it's for a very specific task, creating an alternative to the heavy liquidity needs for the current nostro vostro system of correspondent banking.
And we are talking trillions.
Yeah, there's trillions. This is the huge kind of deadweight loss in the economy when you have money tied up just so you don't run out when you're trying to like move funds from one country to another. It's a deadweight drag on society to have a huge amount of our liquidity tied up in nostro vostro accounts around the world.
This is incredible. I mean, he is acknowledging banks use, that's what they're going to use it for. And we all know this, but this is Greg Kidd. I mean, this isn't us as a community and YouTubers talking about this idea or notion. This is Greg Kidd, right? And it's pretty remarkable to me because when he's talking about in that reply to the question there, he's talking about, if banks hold just enough XRP to be able to handle their payment flows, what it could do for them, basically. Again, the token is a conduit, really, to the ledger and the conversation of the ledger. XRP's success is based on the ledger adoption. The token is a conduit and a key that's given to the house. You know, that's really what this is about. The token is a vehicle to just move you on to the real goal, which is the adoption of the XRP ledger as the world's decentralized regulated exchange. Even though it's decentralized, they can build a framework around it using stable coins to monitor the on and off ramps, which would be the representation of all the fiat of the world. You can tokenize the assets of value that you want to place on the ledger. It's unbelievable. This is remarkable. It's all about the exchange usage to unlock the ability to release those dormant funds from the Nostro Vostro account, in which they can use the vehicle XRP on that ledger. Remarkable. All right, let's go here to 1 second here. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit right here. Getting down to the last two real quick here. Here we go.
He says there might be a day very soon where this 1% translates into the classical note. And he's talking about 1% XRP holders as well.
Right.
This 1% translates into the classical notion of the 1%, the upper echelons of personal net worth. Is that cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs to you, or is that in a scenario, and I'll give you in a scenario where your SWIFT answer is not a 2 and it's an 8 or a 9. In that scenario, is that a crazy statement?
Well, so again, I'm ex-Federal Reserve. I worked at the Board of Governors in the payments group. And
which, by the way, is what makes me feel like very much that this more than likely is why, and not why, but how, one of the ways how that Ripple was able to attain access to the Federal Reserve and eventually make those relationships and get onto the Federal Reserve Faster Payments Task Force. This to me is pretty darn remarkable, I have to say. What we're listening to is it's remarkable. Great interview to DAI. Here we go.
And but it's been 15 years since I was there. If I was there now and somebody told me that, like, in the future the U.S. government's going to be, $1 trillion here, $3 trillion there, printing money, I wouldn't have believed it. Now, we live in that reality. I'm not making a political or social statement as to whether that's good policy or bad. But when you have the other forms of value, being printed with sort of like no end in sight, it does suggest that maybe you should have some portion of your net worth in something that is very difficult to debase. And obviously, if you're like one of those 1%ers, it's kind of an easier thing to do that. And but in society, people have historically, they've always tucked some gold away somewhere or put some cash in the mattress or had a traveler's check tucked away in their wallet. Why wouldn't you have some portion of your net worth tied up in an asset that may be inflation and debasement proof? So
it's been a great talk, Greg.
Yeah. Hey guys,
Mr. DAI,
so he just answers the question about the Hodor 1%. He doesn't want to go too deep because they're on link to private equity company. He can't speak too much about the advice for investment. He has some guidelines he has to follow there. So let's go to this last question really quickly here at 27:05. Let's listen to this and then it's out.
2 or 3 things here that they said and then ask you a question, because words mean things. I've learned that at age 46.
I sure do.
This is Naveen Gupta of Ripple. He says, Ripple is not an ordinary company. We are not here to have a small market share and make a small amount of money. We are here to make a dent in the universe. And then Brad Garlinghouse has referred several times to Ripple as creating what will be a new world order. Miguel Valles, he said that the goal was to have the liquidity in XRP of a G10 currency. And then Chris Larson said that he thinks XRP is going to become like the Singapore dollar or the Swiss franc. Evan Schwartz said that the addressable market, these are all guys that work for Ripple or did work for Ripple. He says the addressable market size is, I quote, all of the money. So the question is, against that backdrop, am I right in thinking that Ripple and or XRP could be the greatest investment opportunity of my lifetime?
Listen to this answer.
Well, I can never talk about investments, but I just remember when I was playing the poker game and somebody described what Ripple was to me. And I felt like Moses coming down and saying, well, there's this
Felt like Moses coming down. Hold on a minute.
That Ripple and or XRP could be the greatest investment opportunity of my lifetime. Is that?
Well, I can never talk about investments, but I just remember when I was playing the poker game and somebody described what Ripple was to me. And I felt like Moses coming down and saying, well, there's this concept of a universal ledger, one ledger for all the value in the world.
It's all about the ledger. XRP, the token, is just a vehicle to access the ledger.
And it has both the new form of value, but it also has a representation of the old forms of value. And that sweeping statement and scope, I mean, I didn't think I was going to go back into the workforce. That's probably the last time in the last 20 or 30 years where I said, well, I got to go down and meet those guys and talk them into giving me a job because I want to be part of that grand experiment. It is an experiment at that scope, which asks the question of what would happen if we did have a universal ledger. And so this is one of those gambles. And again, my history has been involved in things that have been kind of go for the fences type plays, like Twitter, like Square. So Ripple is one of those, and it could be a disaster, but it's like that scene in Armageddon when Steve Buscemi, he's hooked up for the asteroid. It looks like the whole world's going to end, and he's like he's not concerned with whether the world's going to end or not. He just wants to have a really good spot to see whether it's going to be saved or end. And I can't think of a better way for me than working there, but I've enjoyed just investing because it's kept me curious. It's made me be interested, and it's really exciting to know that folks like you are out there are in the hunt and on the journey. But I certainly cannot predict. I'm not allowed to predict.
Right.
One ring to rule them all. Yes, thank you. Really.
Hey, Greg, thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Really, really great. So when he uses the analogy of the Buscemi in Armageddon and having a seat at the end of the world and wherever it's going to play out, remember that he has bought a $1 billion XRP seat. 1%. 1%. That's the kind of seat. That's not exactly a lawn chair. Okay? So he's got one hell of a position watching and see what happens in this quote unquote experiment. So this is pretty remarkable. And again, he really, really sends it home at the end here that it's about one universal ledger. I've made no mistake about telling people I believe everything runs on the ledger. He's saying the same thing. If this is going to work, that's what needs to happen. I'm reminded of Mike Novogratz, the Bitcoin guy, talking about at some point we're going to have a trust layer, a foundation that everything's built off of. I'm even more emboldened at this point after hearing this interview, that one layer, that trust layer, not one layer, but that trust layer that brings all of these different networks together is XRPLedger and the ILP. It's pretty remarkable. I want to shout out DAI for this interview. This is just 12 questions of straight fire with Greg Kidd, one of the original guys at Ripple. and he has an incredible position, and he's still believing in it to this day. And I tell you what, I couldn't be more emboldened. It's not financial advice, but I tell you what, I've invested in other things in my years of putting money into things, and I've never had the access to the kind of information that we've had here or along the way in this journey that we've been on. Guys, I'm going to wrap it right there. Shout out again to DAI for a great interview. Shout out to Greg Kidd. Shout out to Link to Joe Espinoza and Bill right there pictured. These guys are really remarkable people, and they're doing really great things. So shout out to Link to. Check them out if you're interested. And don't forget, iTrust Capital just started offering gold IRAs and a better option than your traditional version. So make sure you check them out. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.